In the unpredictable world of fantasy sports, when all hope seems lost and chaos and confusion rule, one hero will rise. And change everything. GoingFor2.com. Because no one remembers the extra point.
Unfortunate deep one for the end zone. Phelan is down there. Oh, he got it! He got it! He got it! Touchdown!
What is going on, guys? All right, welcome to episode 81 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Presented, as always, by TalkLoudRadio.com, coming at you live every Friday night on Facebook Live, Periscope, YouTube, and Twitch, and, of course, streaming in the GoingFor2 app for iOS and Android. I'm here, as always, with my host. I say as always, but he wasn't here last week. He had some things he had to do. But my co-host, Mr. Ryan Searfoss. How you doing tonight, Ryan?
Fantastic, man. We are less than a week away.
It's exciting, man.
From game time. Yeah, it's unreal.
Yeah, I know you've been working on your big board there. How's that coming?
It's all done. All 50's ranked, and I already had some complaints about my top 10, so I'm super excited about that. But all of the my little snippets are almost done. I'm 36 players in. I'll probably have it done over the weekend.
Sweet.
So,
all right, good stuff there. And also joining us tonight, we actually have two guests coming on tonight, both from the Hot Take podcast, which is now syndicated on GoingFor2.com. You can check them out. Just go to the main menu, go to where it says podcast, and you can find their podcast there, Hot Take Podcast. Steve Toroni and Blake Sullivan. Blake is also a writer now for GoingFor2. He's doing some DFS stuff for us for baseball. So we'll go to you first, Blake. How you doing tonight, man?
Pretty good. Excited to be here, ready for the draft to start. That's really when football season starts to kick off for me. This kind of 2-month break feels really good, and we get some podcasts in, but it's kind of nice to get a breather from it. And then, once the draft happens, just come back in full force and, give out rankings and all that good stuff and really get geared up going into next season.
All right, good stuff. And then your co-host, Mr. Steven, it's Toroni, right? That's how you say your last name?
It's Toroni. Yeah, Toroni. I don't want to, come on and be correcting you. No, it's Toroni, just to save the confusion for the listener.
Gotcha. Yeah, I meant to ask you before we went live, and I forgot, and I'm looking at it like, oh, shit, I don't know how to say his last name, so hopefully I get it right.
It's all good, Geoff. It's no problem. No, but it's a pleasure to be on the show, man. I mean, we've been in communication ever since I joined the community, and I know you and Blake are really tight, so obviously an extension of my co-host is, extension of me. So I really am excited to be on the show here.
Good stuff. All right, guys, tell us where we can, actually, someone's got their mic live. Is there a video playing? I got an echo. Is anybody playing the Facebook video? No? I don't know why I got
No, I can hear the echo, though.
Yeah, I can hear the echo, too. It's like there's a live mic. Oh,
it's good now.
Yeah, now it's good. I don't know what happened. It's good now. All right, so I was going to ask y'all to, Stephen, we'll start with you first. Give us your Twitter handle and talk about your show a little bit and what it's all about.
Yeah, so that's at FF Professor ST3. The Hot Take podcast, we started very modestly last summer. Me and Blake got together and we were like, let's do a series. Let's do a one-off series, kind of like a crossover thing. And we started off with our player rankings. By the time we got to our wide receivers, we had Marcus Grant of the NFL Network on. So we were like, you know what? I think we got something here. And I think we put in enough effort and kind of perfected our craft, so to speak, in that first couple months. So we were like, let's make it a year-round thing. We love fantasy football, and we know there's a lot of people that do. So we try to appeal to a wide variety of fantasy football listeners. Dynasty, best ball we throw in a lot, but really we're a holistic redraft fantasy football podcast.
All right, good stuff. And then Blake, I know you're now writing for us. I don't know why I still have this open mic somewhere. It's pissing me off. I don't know why I'm getting this echo all of a sudden. So talk about Blake a little bit. I know me and you've been in contact for a while on Twitter. We're in that big share group there. Talk about how you and Steven hooked up, and just give us your Twitter handle where we can follow you at.
Yeah, it's at Blake Sullivan FF, and you can follow me over at the FSGN as well, or you can follow the podcast at Hot Take Pod. And yeah, so with Steven, we just kind of started this as a one-off deal. We were going to do a show for the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. So it's going to be a 4-episode deal. We decided to call it the Hot Take because we were going to go head-to-head and battle it out. And it was going to be between Rotoballer and Fantrax, kind of like this little head-to-head battle. But by the end of the 4 episodes, we agreed on too much stuff. So we kind of had to remold it, and we just decided to keep rolling with the show. And I think we did really well for our first season, had a lot of good takes, helped some listeners win some leagues. And like Steven said, it's holistic. So in season, we're looking a lot at, redraft and DFS stuff. But once you get towards the end of the year, you're looking for guys to pick up for your dynasty leagues, just really focusing on playoffs. And then obviously we do a lot of best ball and stuff in the summer.
All right, good stuff there, good stuff. All right, so I was going to do some news and notes to start the show off, but there really hasn't been anything worth talking about, and we got a pretty jam-packed show here, so we're going to skip the news and notes for tonight. Basically what we're going to do, we're going to try to get through the top 24 rookies coming into the NFL. As far as fantasy goes, obviously landing spot will change a lot of things that we're going to talk about tonight. And to get through all 24, I knew if we tried to do that with the 4 of us and all of us giving our takes on each individual guy, we would be here all night. So I decided to go ahead and break it up. I gave us each 6 guys to talk about, and we'll kind of go through them one by one. And then at the end, we're going to go over a couple guys that are outside of the 24 that we also like. And Steven, you're kicking it off right here with my top guy and a lot of consensus top guys. N'Keal Harry a little bit. Talk about N'Keal Harry and where you think he might land.
Yeah, we just talked about the rookies on the Hot Take in our last episode. We had Chris Allen and Anthony Servino on. And kind of a big takeaway about these wide receivers is no top 5 is the same. But N'Keal Harry is pretty much the quintessential wide receiver 1 in this class. If you don't have him at 1, he's most likely in your top 3. He seems to be the most consistent person on each of these top 5 lists, any top 5 list you see. Obviously, we saw the highlight tape of N'Keal Harry, dominant. Really, double teams in college didn't do anything for stopping N'Keal Harry. He's a downfield threat. He has, great burst off the line. So he really is the quintessential wide receiver 1 in this class because of the size and the speed combination. He's also, 78th percentile burst score, 90th percentile speed score. I mean, he just kind of flashes off the charts in the metrics department. But what I like about him that I think not a lot of people are thinking is that I think that he could be a very successful receiver in the league in the slot. So I think that'll tie into, my fit for him.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, so where do you have him going?
I actually have him going to the Baltimore Ravens. We look at the Ravens, and they have the biggest need for wide receivers. So any of the receivers we're talking about today, if you say Ravens, yeah, that makes sense. They need somebody. But if you give Lamar Jackson in his second year somebody like N'Keal Harry, and like I said, if you put him in the slot and he has that breakaway speed, he has, the run after the catch, the yak, N'Keal Harry could be great for Lamar Jackson where he really doesn't have to force things. Just get the ball to your playmaker and let him do the work.
Yeah, that's a good spot for him. And Ryan, I heard you in the background give a little woo because I know you're a Ravens fan. What do you think of that landing spot for N'Keal Harry?
I mean, my top receiver to my team. What's there not to like? I think he's perfect for what they do. Not only is he a good receiver, he's physical, he goes and gets the ball, but he also blocks, which for Baltimore's offense is important for them. So I think it's a good fit, and I think he will produce there. there's a lot of misconceptions about the offense, but I think he'll do very well there.
All right, good stuff there. All right, N'Keal Harry going to the Ravens. That's a good landing spot there. All right, Blake, you're up next, and you got the pretty much consensus number 2 receiver across the board. I know a couple guys got Akeem Butler up here, but A.J. Brown seems to be the consensus number 2. Talk about him a little bit and where you think he might go.
Yeah, Steven started off pretty hot there, so I got some big shoes to fill. But A.J. Brown is a great second pick to N'Keal Harry. Really, I could see a couple of these guys being toss-ups, basically just depending on what the team needs. So some of these guys have a little bit different style play. You talked about run blocking, how that might be so important for Baltimore, but to another team that might not be that big of a deal, and they might want to go into a different player with some different skill sets. So I think that's really what's going to come down to when you're breaking down these top 5 or 6 wide receivers. But when I'm looking at A.J. Brown, the first thing I think of is Odell Beckham Jr. And obviously he's not quite as good with his hands, but he has really good footwork, and he's pretty good in the open field. He's pretty elusive, and he's a little bit bigger than Odell, even though he's not quite as agile, I would say. He's not quite as skilled, doesn't have the vertical that Odell does, but he is a little bit bigger bodied. And, kind of ironically, I see him going to the Giants or the Panthers. They're at 16 and 17. I could see them going either way, especially if the Giants go with quarterback at that first pick that they have at the 6th spot. If they could go quarterback, wide receiver in the first round and get a great duo like that, I think they could be sitting in really good shape this year, actually.
Yeah, that's a good spot there. I actually hadn't even thought about anybody going to the Giants, but that's a good point because they can actually because they got 2 first-round picks. They could get the quarterback and receiver combo and be set up, for a long time after they finally let go of the Eli Manning thing that they just don't seem to want to let go of. So, love that landing spot for A.J. Brown for sure. All right, I'm next up, and I have my personal crush. I wanted to make sure I actually gave him to myself because I wanted to talk about him. Kind of funny coming in, so I've kind of said this multiple times on the podcast. I don't watch college football. I don't actually watch any of these guys until the off season, and then I get on YouTube and watch their videos. So it kind of gives me a different perspective. I don't have any biases. I don't have any team interests, so I come in very raw looking at these guys. And when I first came in, started looking at some guys, a few guys popped off the page, and Miles Sanders was one of those guys. I didn't hear a lot about him, and I couldn't figure out why no one was talking about him. And I kept saying his name, and they were like, well, he played behind Saquon Barkley, and, how come he couldn't get any playing time when he was in Penn State until Barkley left, et cetera, et cetera. And then he went to the combine and just crushed it. I mean, he had, I got his numbers here, 4.4940, which was 8th overall in the combine. He did a 4.19 in the 20-yard shuttle, which was 3rd overall. And in the 3-cone at 6.89, he was the best overall in the combine. Just crushed it. You look at his numbers from last year: 220 rushing yards. 220 rushes for 1,274 yards, 9 touchdowns. He's obviously a workhorse type back. We didn't see him quite be the receiver that Saquon Barkley was, but I think he's capable of it. I just don't think that Penn State used him in the way that they used Barkley, or the way the Giants used Barkley last year. And I think that he's my number 1 running back on the board. And I think if I was to put him in a great landing spot, which I'm going to give you my landing spot here in just a second, he might actually end up being my 1.01 in this draft if he gets a good landing spot. Just because running backs in fantasy football are obviously the big thing. So with that said, my ideal landing spot for Miles Sanders is going to be the Texans. I think Lamar Miller has kind of wore out his welcome there. I think that if they find a good reason to get rid of Lamar Miller, they will, or at least replace him in the starting lineup. And I think Miles Sanders could definitely do that. And I think that the Texans would be an awesome place for him to go because it's a young team. You got Deshaun Watson there. You got DeAndre Hopkins. They're all pretty young. He can grow with them. They can kind of build sort of their Texan version of the triplets from back in the day when there was Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin in that same state. So I think that could be a great place for them there. Now, I also kind of wrote down where I think he might actually go. Just looking at the places everyone falls. I looked at the Bills as being a team that might get him. I have him as a 3rd round grade. And the Bills at the 3rd round, 11th pick in the 3rd round, would actually be wise to add him. They've got the oldest backfield in the league. They got Frank Gore and Shady McCoy there. They're both over 30. I think Frank Gore is pushing 40 at this point. And to add a guy like Miles Sanders, he may play behind them early in the season, but I can't imagine that both those guys are going to last all season. and Sanders could eventually take over that starting job. It's not the ideal place I'd want him to go. I'd like to see him go to the Texans, but the Bills actually would be a good spot there for him as well. So those are my two spots for him.
Did you see the picture Frank Gore posted today? He ain't giving up that starting job.
Frank Gore ain't never going away. Frank Gore will not die.
Dude, he looks huge, man.
Yeah. He's
One of these days we're going to find out he's just the Terminator.
Yeah.
Like he was just sent back in time to just destroy the NFL.
Exactly. It's funny coming in because, obviously I'm a 49ers fan. Coming into the NFL, he had the injury bug, sort of label attached to him, and then he goes out and he's basically an Iron Man. He's played, multiple games in a row. Now, he finally did get hurt last year and ended that streak, but, I mean, he played, for a running back, for that long to play and not miss a game is pretty astounding. All right, Ryan, you're up next, and you got Mr. Hakeem Butler at number 4. Talk about Butler a little bit and give us where you think he might land.
Hakeem Butler's an absolute alien. He's 6'5", 227. He has the longest arm length for any receiver ever. So he's 99th percentile of that. He's in the top 97th percentile for adjusted speed score. And he's absolutely fantastic. He has little issues with drops, but that's something that he can get over in the NFL, especially with his massive hand size and him being younger. The thing that really stands out is his big playability, though. A dude who's that big shouldn't average 22 yards a catch. It's absolutely freakish. He could honestly be a guy who can play anywhere, but I'm pitting him with the Colts. They have T.Y. Hilton spread the field. They have all those tight ends, but Hakeem Butler gives them that big receiver. I know Funchess is there, but I don't care. Butler's that, but athletic and good. So I'm giving him there. So they have a pseudo 1B receiver to T.Y. Hilton's 1A. And I think he'll be fantasy gold in that landing spot.
Yeah, that would be an awesome spot for him because we know Andrew Luck likes those big guys down close to the end zone. He's got Eric Ebron and Doyle when he was healthy. Adding Butler there as that big receiver, I mean that's just going to be an awesome combination there. You got T.Y. Hilton, the smaller guy with the speed. Hakeem Butler on the other side, the big guy could be the red zone threat. That offense would be scary good if he does go there. That'd be an awesome landing spot for them. All right, next up we got DK Metcalf, and we're going back to you, Steven. Talk about the combine sort of phenom here, DK Metcalf.
First of all, the Devin Funchess disrespect is real, and I appreciate it. I just wanted to go on record and say that. Love the Miles Sanders take, by the way. He would be my 101 also. I think he's the highest trending running back right now, and if he gets a spot like the Bears or something like that, or the Texans prime spot, we could see his ADP jump up even in redraft. I think that he's going to be a great asset to fantasy football. But going to DK Metcalf, talking about the Giants, Blake, you know what? We're on the same page. They need a wide receiver, but they need somebody who's taller than 6 foot. Golden Tate, Corey Coleman, I'll add as a third guy, and then of course Sterling Shepard. All of these guys are 5'10", 5'11". So they need size, they need speed. That's DK Metcalf rolled into one. Obviously, the metrics jump off the chart. We know what he did at the combine. We've seen the pictures. He's, if Hakeem Butler is an alien, then DK Metcalf is like a new age dinosaur. I don't know what's going on with this guy. But bust has been thrown out for DK Metcalf. And, we're talking about what could be in the NFL. We've seen a lot of physical specimens not do well. But let's put him on the Giants where they need size and speed, and put him on the outside with Eli Manning in his last year. Hopefully they draft a quarterback for the future, like you were talking about, Jeff, and then you have kind of like a clear picture of, the triplets with Saquon, whatever quarterback, and then DK Metcalf.
Yeah, that would be a great landing spot for them as well. DK Metcalf, I mean, he's probably the most polarizing prospect I think we have in this draft. I've seen, the pro DK Metcalf guys are like, he's the next Julio Jones and, all this stuff because of the metric that he put up. And then I see guys who are saying that he's going to be the bust. He's the next Dorial Green Beckham or the next John Baldwin, guys that were hyped up, super athletic that just didn't do anything in the NFL. So the difference in opinion on DK Metcalf is crazy, and I just can't wait to see what he actually does in the NFL.
Yeah, what we saw in college is that he's a burner and he can get that ball over top. So as long as, whatever quarterback he has can get it downfield, I think he's going to have a chance at success in the NFL.
Yeah, I think I actually did in my mock draft. I actually had him going to the Buffalo Bills with that Josh Allen's huge arm there. That would be an amazing combination. Allen, of course, got to work on his accuracy a little bit, but I think that huge arm would benefit Metcalf as well. All right, Blake, you are up, and you have the former top running back, sort of coming into the offseason. He was the guy everyone was talking about. He's kind of fallen off a little bit, and that's David Montgomery. Give us your thoughts on him and where you think he might go.
Yeah, I really like David Montgomery, and I think he could have a great NFL career. I'm a little bit worried about him outside. He's a great north-south runner, but I worry about his movement laterally. He just doesn't look quite as explosive as I had hoped, but I still think he could have a great career. And I compared him to Mark Ingram, who Mark Ingram had a 4.62 40. We got David Montgomery at a 4.63, and they both have kind of these similar styles of running. So if you get a guy like Montgomery and you put him behind a line like Mark Ingram would have, I think he could have a great career and some good seasons and provide some good fantasy value. Kind of a season like LeGarrette Blount had with the Patriots where it's just touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. But I just don't see him being this guy that's going to go out and take the rushing title.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've heard him sort of compared to, a jack of all trades, master of none. He does everything well, but nothing elite. I think he can be a solid running back wherever he lands. I do think he needs, that offensive line to sort of help him out because he doesn't have that other world sort of athleticism to overcome that like Saquon Barkley did last year for the New York Giants. So I think he would be a solid back there. I think at the back half of the first round in Dynasty or maybe even the second round, top of the second round, he'd be a great pickup there. Just a solid guy, maybe a bye week fill-in or someone that you can plug in when you have injuries. I think he would be a great fit there. And it's coming back to me now, and I actually ended up with a couple tight ends on my sheet, just the way things fell. And the first one I'm going to talk about here is going to be T.J. Hockenson from Iowa, 6'5", 251 pounds. Great season last year with 49 catches, 760 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He also had 1 rushing touchdown. He had a really good combine. I know he was kind of overshadowed by his teammate Fant, but he ran a 4.7 40, which was the 7th best. His 20-yard shuttle was 2nd overall, and his 3-cone was also 2nd overall. So great combine, just kind of overshadowed a little bit by Fant, who's a little bit better overall athlete, but I think Hawkinson's the more complete tight end of the two. I think he's an elite blocker that can actually, find his way on the field as a rookie, whereas I think Fant might have to sit a year. Not sit necessarily, but he won't get quite as many reps as Hockenson will. As we know, tight ends take longer to sort of develop in the NFL. He's a dominant blocker in college, like I mentioned, and I think that helps him out. If you're going to draft him, I think he can get some value right off the bat. And as far as the ideal landing spot for him, I have him going to the Lions. And I think the Lions have been sort of looking for that tight end, for ever since Ebron. I mean, they had Ebron, thought he was the next big thing. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out there. And, he just seemed to be able to drop the ball whenever it was the most inconvenient times. He dropped a couple touchdowns I've seen. Of course, he went off to Indianapolis and had a pretty good season last year. But I think the Lions need some pass catchers. Obviously, they lost Golden Tate. Marvin Jones is, coming off injury. We don't really know what we're going to get with him. So I think that Hockenson would fit perfectly in that offense. They also want to kind of go to the run game a little bit more, so that elite blocking will help them out with Kerryon Johnson. So overall, perfect fit there for the Lions. And I think he could definitely go in the first round to the Lions. Where I think he might end up, and I've seen it mocked multiple times, is actually with the Green Bay Packers. And I don't love that landing spot because I don't think we've seen too many situations in the past where Rodgers has made a tight end 1 out of somebody. I think Jermichael Finley was the last guy that actually was a tight end 1 in that offense. Of course, they got Jimmy Graham still there. He's got 1 more year on his contract, but we saw last year he's a shell of himself, just not what he used to be, and I just don't think that he fits in that offense the way we thought he would when he first went there. So Hockenson would be a great fit for the Packers as well, but if I'm picking an ideal landing spot, it's definitely the Lions.
I've been habitually doing that in my mock drafts. I love him there. Patricia's trying to build his team just like the Patriots. Mm-hmm. That's his Gronk fill-in. Not saying he's Gronk by saying that. I'm saying that's his placeholder for it.
Yeah, because there's not many Gronks. You're not going to go out and just find the next Gronk because this is not going to happen. But yeah, that's a good point here. He is kind of building it. Unfortunately, he has that frustrating tendency to also want to use multiple running backs. I know the fantasy world wants him to give the ball to Kerryon Johnson, but he seems dead set on spreading it around a la Patriot style, so that's kind of frustrating. Speaking of tight ends and Fant, as I mentioned, Ryan, you're up next with number 8, Noah Fant. Who do you got him going to?
So I got Fant's a completely different kind of tight end, kind of what you brought up. He's an ultra athlete. He's that split out tight end who we're seeing now, like the Evan Ingrams, that type of smaller tight end who just burns down the field. He's a mismatch nightmare. He's 95th percentile, like 90th percentile up on almost everything. 96 40-yard dash, 97th vertical, 95th broad jump, 95 3-cone. He's honestly athletic enough and uncoverable. So he's going to be a fantastic weapon. I actually changed my pick about last minute, kind of going through the draft order when you're bringing teams up. I put them in Washington. Their offense ran through Jordan Reed for so long, and Jordan Reed is a shell of a football player now, being he is beat to shit and he's injured off and on every year. Noah Fant is bigger, stronger, faster. He's not going to be beat up the way he is because he's not he's undersized, but he's not 230 pounds. He's not tiny. He's big, and they can run that offense through him. He can spread the field. He can give them a legit weapon. Honestly, a lot of people have them taking a receiver in the first, which makes sense because they need one. But the class is so deep, why not get Fant there and pair him with a receiver later on in the draft?
Yeah, that's a good call. Actually, I live in Washington, D.C., so I get all the news, around here. And Fant's not one that they've talked a lot about. I've heard, obviously I've heard DK Metcalf. I've heard they might take a quarterback in that first round. I've heard even Marquise Brown. They've talked about him a little bit, which we'll get to him later. And Fant hasn't been brought up, but you're right. I mean, he would fit perfectly in that Redskins offense because they are sort of a dink and dunk offense right now because they don't have a quarterback that can really get the ball down the field. Even if Alex Smith comes back, he isn't a down the field thrower. Colt McCoy is not really a down the field thrower, and they got Case Keenum now, and he's not a down the field thrower. So that tight end position is going to become very, very important. And Jordan Reed just can't stay healthy between concussions and soft tissue injuries and everything else. He just can't stay on the field. If he can stay on the field, he's a top tight end, but unfortunately, he just can't seem to do that.
No, how can you even see him coming back even if he is healthy? There's no way he's going to be the player that he was with that many injuries.
Agreed. All right, we'll do one more here, round out the top 10 with a quick commercial break. So we're going to go to you, Steven. You've got Rodney Anderson.
Yeah, Rodney Anderson, obviously the big thing with Anderson is he's coming off the knee injury, the devastating ACL tear. So in the sophomore season at Oklahoma, 188 carries for 1,161 yards. That's 6.2 yards per carry with 13 touchdowns. So that's 6.2 yards per carry, and then you compare it to somebody like David Montgomery, who couldn't get over 5 for his last 2 collegiate seasons. I think you're seeing the explosive kind of player that you want in a David Montgomery. So if you take away that injury in his junior year, I'm talking about Rodney Anderson as probably the 101 in rookie drafts. So we have to talk about Rodney Anderson as an elite talent with injury risk. He's going to fall in drafts because of that injury risk, and I like him going to the Bears because of that. So the Bears obviously have the need at running back, and they don't have a draft pick until the 3rd round. So obviously because of the Khalil Mack trade, they are out of draft picks for the first 2 rounds. They won't draft until the 3rd round, where Rodney Anderson is going to start getting looks. We've seen it in the past with the Bears. They aren't bashful to trade up for a player, and it's worked out for them in the past. I think Rodney Anderson is, they are in a position where they've signed Mike Davis. They have Tariq Cohen. If they can get Rodney Anderson, that will complete that backfield, and they can kind of mediate that risk because they are already a balanced offense. So, if you add Rodney Anderson and he is that elite guy, I mean, it's wheels up for the Bears offense and Rodney Anderson in fantasy football.
Yeah, if he ends up being the starter or gets healthy, oh God, that echo is bad. If he ends up being healthy there, man, they have no need to even run other running backs. He's that good of a talent.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say, again, I don't watch college football, and my first guy that I looked at in this offseason was Rodney Anderson, and I couldn't figure out why people had him ranked so low. I'm like, I texted Ryan, like, what's up with Rodney Anderson? Why is he why is he not number one overall? I mean, this guy's amazing. He's like jumping off the page to me. He seems to be the best running back out right now. He's like, well, 3 of the 4 years he had a career-ending injury or a season-ending injury, so that's, kind of bringing him back a little bit. And I think if he's able to overcome that, sort of like we talked about earlier with Frank Gore coming into the NFL, he was labeled injury risk and then went on to be one of the Ironmans of the NFL. If Rodney Anderson can somehow find a way to stay healthy, I think he can be an amazing running back. And you're right, the Bears have the perfect situation because they do have sort of that placeholder Mike Davis there. Tariq Cohen he's a star in his own right, so they can put Rodney Anderson and be that third running back on the team and not have to be the week 1 starter and sort of work his way in there and not have to do everything right away. And that's a good place to put him. I like Chicago. I like their offense. I like Nagy, the way he uses his running backs. I think he fits perfectly there. So that's a great landing spot for him.
Yeah, Anderson was actually my Heisman dark horse going into the season, and then that injury obviously just ended it. I actually almost took that one to Vegas. I was really pumped. I thought Anderson could have, obviously his teammate ended up getting it, so it was all good. But
good stuff. All right, we'll take a quick commercial break. That rounds up the top 10. Quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk. We got Kelvin Harmon, Josh Jacobs, and Paris Campbell up next. So just hang tight, guys. We'll be right back.
Fantasy football. It's not just a social interaction anymore. Today's manager plays to win, and the difference between winning and losing is so small, a manager will do whatever it takes to get an edge. Yet the other sites offer the same content at an extremely high cost. It's time to get away from the old and step into the future of fantasy stats. This is StatRoute. StatRoute allows you to find any data set for any player or team in 7 seconds or less, all on a simple, easy-to-use application. Want to see which running back performed best in the snow last season? How about the past 5 seasons? And in the fourth quarter? Or maybe you're unsure of which quarterback to start for the upcoming week. With our Stats IP technology, you can now quickly see how Matt Stafford has performed in the rain, during the second half of the season, in New York, compared with how Russell Wilson has played during primetime games, at home, versus the Rams' new defensive coordinator, Wade Phillips. At StatRoute, it's our mission to deliver state-of-the-art technology, guaranteed to keep you ahead of the curve. So, whether you're a casual football fan, a weekly fantasy trash talker, or a DFS hustler, we've got you covered. Welcome to the new standard for stats delivery. We are StatRoute. Take back your league.
All right, guys, welcome back. We want to thank our sponsors, StatRoute. If you use promo code G42FF, you can save half off a yearly subscription there. They're an awesome tool if you play DFS, if you play fantasy football. They got some stats that you can't find anywhere else. They mentioned it in the commercial there where you can check and see how players do in the rain, how players do in the second half of the season, how players do in the fourth quarter, versus, over 5 years, over 10 years. So it's a really cool tool that I've been using quite a bit, especially for DFS. You find those diamonds in the rough, guys that play better in certain situations, whether it be on turf field or, obviously, any kind of situation where there's rain or snow, those kind of things. You can definitely check that out. So again, use the promo code G42FF and save half off your subscription there. All right, guys, we got the bottom 14 here to talk about, and Blake, you're kicking this off here with Kelvin Harmon. Talk about him a little bit and where you think he might go.
Yeah, so when I'm looking at Kelvin Harmon, I don't see anything that really jumps off the page. Like when you see DK Metcalf or N'Keal Harry, obviously those couple top guys just really wow you. I don't get that feeling with Kelvin Harmon, but I think that he's a very solid player. And again, I think he could have a great career in the NFL. I kind of compared him a little bit to Jordy Nelson, who obviously if you look at Jordy Nelson, you can see him run, you can see him do things, and you're like, okay, this guy's like a wide receiver 3, right? But you put him in a game, he's a great route runner, has good hands, does all the things right, working with his quarterback, all those things, goes up for jump balls, really competes with his defender. all those things I think could really make him a good receiver in the league, even though he doesn't have some of the metrics that are, really wowing. And I have him going to Denver at the 47 or Pittsburgh at 52, because I could see both of those teams just needing a solid receiver. Obviously, they have pieces. In Pittsburgh, they have James Washington, who looks good, and they have Juju Smith-Schuster, but then it kind of falls apart. And obviously, in Denver, they bring in Joe Flacco. Flacco's going to need somebody other than Deshaun Hamilton and Emmanuel Sanders.
Yep, that's a good place to put both of those guys. I like.
No love for Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, you got a couple of those guys there with injuries. I don't know how they're going to come back, but it never hurts to have an extra guy on your team, even if they don't find their way into the starting lineup right away.
I love the comparison, by the way. That's spot on.
Yeah, I agree. I was just going to say that Nelson's the perfect comp there, and I was always kind of finding difficulty trying to give him a comp. And I had Harmon ranked fairly high until his combine because his metrics kind of did disappoint a little bit. But you're right. I mean, it's not all about metrics. And, guys sometimes come in the league and they don't have the top metrics. They end up being one of the better receivers in the league. So, Harmon is a great route runner, does everything right. He's, he's the Jordy Nelson, really, is what he is. So that's a good comp there. I love it. All right.
Thielen just got paid being like that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. 100%. Another guy just like that. Just do everything the right way, run good routes, be where you're supposed to be, and you'll be successful. All right, the next guy I got on my list here is he was originally sort of everybody's top running back. Unfortunately, his pro day didn't go so well. He ran a 4.69 40, which kind of put a damper on him a little bit, and that's Josh Jacobs from Alabama, 5'10", 220. He played in that three-headed monster there in Alabama, so his numbers don't jump out at you. 120 rushes, 640 yards. He did have 11 touchdowns, which is nice. He's also a great receiver out of the backfield at 20 catches for 247 and 3 touchdowns. So his ideal landing spot was pretty easy for me. It's probably my favorite spot for any running back that's sort of a dual threat running back, and that's going to be the Buccaneers. I think with Bruce Arians there and what he did with David Johnson in his years in Arizona, you put a receiving type back that can do it all, like Josh Jacobs, in that offense that loves to throw the ball down the field, and it's just a match made in heaven. I think Jacobs will be perfect in that offense. I'm not buying the Rojo. I know Ryan's a big supporter of Rojo, and he's still trying to hold on to that hope a little bit. They got Peyton Barber there too, who's just an average back. I think Josh Jacobs, if he lands with the Bucks, what was that, Ryan?
I got 2 trade offers for him this week out of nowhere.
All right. Yeah, good stuff. So, yeah, I think Josh Jacobs will fit perfectly in that Bucs offense. Personally, being a little selfish, I was kind of hoping that the Browns would trade Duke Johnson there. I actually went out in my Dynasty League and bought Duke Johnson thinking he would get traded to a team that actually would know how to use him properly. Unfortunately, it's looking more and more like I'm going to be stuck with Duke Johnson on the Browns, and I already own Nick Chubb, so now I just paid for a handcuff, basically. But I think any back that you put there, a receiving back in that offense, is going to be awesome. Then I went ahead and gave a spot where I think he might go. I think he's got like a 3rd or 4th round grade there, and the Raiders are at the top of the 4th round, and they need a running back. So I think Josh Jacobs would also fit there with the Raiders. I don't think he's quite the traditional back that Gruden wants there, but I think that Josh Jacobs, if he is there in the 4th round still, he may not. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my wrong notes here. I'm looking at Damian Harrison. My bad. I think he'll actually go to the Jags. That's where I had him going. He's actually a 1st-round talent. He'll fall probably to the 2nd round just based on the depth here at defense. And the Jags just aren't thrilled with Fournette. They got rid of all his guaranteed money. I think the Jags at the top of the 2nd round at the 2.06 could actually take Josh Jacobs and make him into something. He's sort of the Fournette and T.J. Yeldon combination, and together they can just have one back do it all. So Bucks ideal, and I think he might go to the Jags.
Yeah, that would be an upgrade from the Jags' perspective if they replace T.J. Yeldon with Josh Jacobs. I think that would be great for both parties, the Jaguars and Josh Jacobs.
Agreed 100%. And I think that Foles improves that offense a little bit as well. I think Blake Bortles dragged that offense down last year, so I love that spot for him. All right, Ryan, you're up next with Paris Campbell, the burner.
Yeah, I swear, the first 3 players you gave me are just all like super athletes. Paris Campbell's freaking fast. He ran 4.3 140, and he just absolutely flies all the explosive metrics he killed. The thing with Paris Campbell, he's all over the place in the draft board. So I'm not sure what round he's going to go, anywhere from rounds 1 to 3. Love the skill, but I have him more as a later day 2 pick in the 3rd round. I put him in Baltimore, and I know we already did the Ravens for one, but we're desperate for receivers, and if we took, who'd we have there? N'Keal Harry? Took N'Keal Harry round 1. I would love him paired with Paris Campbell. That's honestly my dream situation, getting him the 3rd. Campbell brings a little bit different to that offense because he's not a traditional receiver. They used him in Ohio State on screen passes, end arounds, all short passing. I don't know why they didn't really use him in deeper game, even though he showed up at the pro day and showed he could do the full route tree. But a guy like that keeps the defense honest. So in Baltimore, he's going to keep the defenses back off him and open things up for everything. And with his big playability and what they have in the run game, he's going to see one-on-ones all day, and he should be a big play machine.
All right, good stuff there. Send him to your team, the Ravens.
I mean, I give my team one guy.
Ryan, who you fooling? They're going to take Hawkinson in the 1st round and then draft Irv Smith Jr. in that 3rd round there.
Hey.
So they want a team full of tight ends.
They had 0 tight end visits this year. There was 0. Like a positional balance, they had 0 visits to the tight end. So I'm ecstatic. And if they get another tight end, I'm quitting the show. I'm gonna be so upset. I'm done with football, man.
All right, yeah, good stuff there. I love Paris Campbell there because people want to talk about Lamar Jackson and his lack of accuracy, but the thing is he's got a big arm, and you get Paris Campbell with that speed and that arm, and then, of course, they're a running team, so teams are going to kind of cheat up a little bit, put 8 men in the box. You get Paris Campbell one-on-one with anybody in the NFL. Just throw it as far as you can. I think he can go get it. So that's a great landing spot there. I think it opens the offense up quite a bit there, especially if they do take N'Keal Harry as well. I mean, could you believe that offense if they had those 2 guys? It'd be ridiculous.
And his run after the catch, they use him as a punt returner, kick returner. They can get him the ball in space anywhere.
Yep, exactly. All right, Steven, let's go to you with the next guy on the board that my last guest on the show, I think you might know him as well, Miguel Shapton. He's kind of a Deebo Samuel hater. He kind of came on and poo-pooed him a little bit. So talk about Deebo and what you think of him.
Yeah, Deebo was a guy when I first looked at these rookies that I thought was going very undervalued. I actually really appreciate what Deebo Samuel does. He doesn't have great speed. He is sub 4.5 40. He doesn't have great burst, it's nothing is elite with Deebo Samuel. But how do you make up for that is you give him an elite quarterback. Last season, and Blake, you know this better than anyone, the Packers really struggled with finding that 2nd, 3rd wide receiver after Devontae Adams. Now, what does Aaron Rodgers like to do? He likes to get rid of the ball quick, and he likes to get out to like that flanker. Talked about Randall Cobb in the past. Deebo Samuel, what he does great is he works out of the slot, and he is great at those bubble screens, and he can, he's big enough to take the hits, and he gets the yards after the catch, obviously. I think he would be perfect in the Packers system. They drafted a lot of guys last year, and none of them really stood out. They all were given opportunities, and I think it just ended in frustration. I think those same guys will still get opportunities, but they're not committed to anyone. If you put Deebo Samuel in this mix with Jamon Moore, MVS, and Equinemius St. Brown, I think he beats out all those guys. And I think that he'll have a lot of value, in a PPR sort of setting.
Yeah, I think that he'd be the perfect sort of fit as in that sort of Randall Cobb role underneath, where he's like I think Ryan said it early on in our shows that Deebo is kind of a running back with the wide receiver, position. He's a running back kind of the way he runs the ball. He's a bigger guy. So, yeah, that's a good spot there for him. I love that with the Packers.
Yeah, I love Deebo. And he does everything. Runs a whole route tree. He's inside, outside. He reminds me a lot of DJ Moore. He'd be a perfect complement there. I love that matchup. I'm a little sad I've never thought of it.
All right, good stuff. Next up, we have number 15, Darrell Henderson, who I know is Ryan's boy. But Blake, you got Darrell Henderson. Go ahead and talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, I think Darrell Henderson's kind of underrated, and part of that's just going to be because you're coming out of Memphis, you're not coming out of Alabama or OU or Clemson, these big powerhouse teams, but I think he could really be a workhorse in a team like Tampa Bay that's sitting at that 70, or if you go a little bit further down the board at 75, the Buffalo Bills are sitting there. You know, LaShawn McCoy's not getting any younger, and they've got this whole youth movement going on in Buffalo right now, and they've got some great talent there.
Except that
you
running
might
back.
add a guy like that. You might add a guy like Darrell Henderson that can be a workhorse, and hopefully in 2 years, when LaShawn McCoy is out of there, you've got a guy that's developed and ready to be that everyday three down back, somebody that can really tough out that cold, and just keep pounding it. And I think he's going to be that guy, whether it be in Buffalo or Tampa Bay. He kind of falls into that same role.
Yeah, I love that play. I love that call there. Ryan, what do you think of those two landing spots? I know he's your boy. You've been talking about him quite a bit.
I'm a huge fan of Darrell Henderson. He's my RB2 right now. He's super explosive. He's a big play guy. I like him in Buffalo as I like him as a complimentary piece for those guys who are pounding the rock. Like LaShawn McCoy isn't that agile guy anymore. He's more downhill runner. Same with Frank Gore. Those guys can early on in his career, while he bulks up, can beat up a defense and just open up running lanes. He averaged almost 9 yards a carry. Like a guy like that is awesome for Josh Allen, and it's awesome for that offense. I think it'll add an explosive element and a little bit of fear to it.
Yeah, I love that play. I love that call as well, and I also, of course, love the Bucks call because again, he would fit perfect in that offense. I think if he did go there, he'd jump up a lot of ADP draft boards there because anyone who lands in the Bucks right now, I think no one's giving any respect to Rojo or to Peyton Barber except for Ryan, who's holding on hope. I think that any back that ends up there is going to jump up in everyone's rankings for sure.
If Miles Sanders lands on the Bucks, I'm drafting him everywhere. Yep. I'll just say that right now.
100% agree. 100% agree. And I think I've got a couple first-round picks late in the first round in my main Dynasty league. I'm probably going to trade him away to move up and get Miles Sanders if he ends up with the Bucks for sure. All right, so I'm next up here, and I got Damian Harris, 5'11", 215 pounds. Again, he played in that offense where there's a three-headed monster. He only had 150 carries, 876, and 9 touchdowns last year. He did have a pretty decent combine, nothing otherworldly. He ran a 4.5 740. And his landing spots here, it was kind of hard for me to kind of figure out where to put him because he's one of those backs that's good but not great. He's sort of a jack of all trades, master of none. And my ideal landing spot for him would be to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars and basically be the Fournette replacement eventually. I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to ride Fournette much longer. They've already taken away his guaranteed money. One more slip up, I think he's going to be on his way out of Jacksonville. So I think Harris could be that replacement, sort of that guy that needs volume to be viable in fantasy, and I think that he gets that volume there in Jacksonville. And the other spot that he might go to as well will be the Raiders in the 4th round. I think the Raiders could use Damian Harrison, again, a solid back, fits that John Gruden mold of just a solid back that's just going to carry the rock and keep the defense honest. I think that those two spots would be a great spot for Damian Harris to land in.
Yeah, I think I'd take him top 7 if he went to Oakland.
Top 7, really? Like
yeah,
overall?
him and Oakland would be perfect. I think they'd ride him. He's everything Gruden wants.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be a fantastic match.
Good stuff. All right, let's see. Who's next up here? I'm losing my spot. Looks like, Ryan, we're going to you with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who I've seen kind of ranked all over the place. I don't know what to think of this guy. Tell me about him a little bit.
So he's a guy who I was fairly low on before his pro day. Normally I don't like that sway me, but when you watch his tape, he got open, but it was all off of boxing out and jump ball situations. He never looked like he was running by anybody. He looked slow. I thought he was a high 4.6 guy and maybe slower, and that doesn't cut it. He came out to his pro day, ran 4.54 legitimately across the board. Even if it was a 4.6, that's all I wanted to see out of him because he's a power forward out there. He has fantastic hands. He uses his body well. He keeps corners out of the way, and in the red zone, he is an absolute force. Kind of reminds me of like how Eric Decker used to win.
Right. Where
he doesn't look all that special out there, but he just continuously gets open. He continuously gets in the red zone.
Love the comp.
I have him going to the Patriots. I know everybody wants the Patriots to have these quick little guys on their team who can catch the ball. But look what they did with Chris Hogan a couple years ago, who's that big slot receiver, and he killed it when he was healthy there. And Arcega-Whiteside could do that. He could work the middle of the field. Their offense is going to look completely different, and they need guys who can catch the ball and be physical, especially in the red zone with the departure of Gronk. I think he's a guy who Brady can trust. He catches everything, and he knows how to get open.
Yeah, I like that because you're right. I mean, the Patriots basically have Julian Edelman and I don't even know who else they have now. It's like it's a who's who of nobody receivers basically. So Arcega-Whiteside gives him that red zone threat, which we know Brady needs sort of that safety blanket underneath there. So yeah, I love that. I love that play there. He is sort of that jump ball guy that they need. All right, next up, we got another one of my draft crushes, and I know me and Ryan have been in a bunch of mock drafts this season. It always ends up whoever goes first ends up sniping the other one on this guy, and that's James Williams.
Third round every time.
Third round every time. Every time. It's whoever goes first in that third round gets this guy. That's James Williams. Steven, talk about him a little bit and where you think he might end up.
Every time I type in James Williams' name, I type in James White. And it's so similar in name, and then, it's almost there in style too, because what we saw James Williams do at the collegiate level was catch the football. And, a lot of times we don't see that with these runners, and we think, well, wait, can they really be used as a pass catcher, which is so valuable now in fantasy football? Well, we already know that with James Williams. 71 catches in his sophomore year, and then 83 catches in his junior year. He's coming out, and what I like about him also is his ability to get into the end zone at the goal line. He had 12 touchdowns last season for Washington State, and a lot of those were within 10 yards. So he has the power, he has the burst, and I really like him in a lot of different situations, actually. But I really am thinking more on what quarterback would benefit from James Williams' ability, and I'm looking at a guy like Josh Allen. So the Bills, what we've been talking about, we've mentioned the Bills a lot, and they have needs, and we see that they need to get younger at the running back position. So Frank Gore and LaShawn McCoy, downhill runners, Shady can still get loose out there, no question, and I think they're going to have the bulk of the carries. But when things break down for Josh Allen and he doesn't have anything downfield, the running lane isn't there, he needs somebody he can really dump it off to, somebody who can come in on third downs. I like James Williams for this team, and he would be a perfect complement to a guy like Frank Gore, who, let's say Frank Gore, I haven't really seen that much in his career. James Williams can come in, dispel him, and the Bills can still be effective running that ball in the red zone. I really like James Williams coming out at Washington State. I think that, you guys are on the pulse. He's not going to be highly touted in these rookie drafts. He's going to slip a little bit, and I think there's a lot of value there with James Williams.
Yeah, I love James Williams there, and I love that landing spot for him as well. And the thing you mentioned, and it's kind of interesting that you mentioned it because I kind of noticed that as well, is you look at his stats, you look at his numbers, you see his catches, and you think, okay, this is a third down back. This is the guy who's catching a ton of passes out of the backfield. But when you watch his tape, they give him the ball in the red zone up the middle of the field, in between the tackles a lot. One of the highlights that I watched, it was first and goal inside the 5, and literally 3 straight handoffs went to him, between the tackles, and he ended up getting in on the third down. So they trusted him in the red zone there, and I think it's kind of like you said, James White. He's very James White-ish in that sense that, he can catch the ball, but he can also run between the tackles as well. So great comp there. And let's not talk about him too much because I don't want him to raise up his ADP too much because I'm hoping to get him in the third round in my Dynasty League. All right, Blake, you got the first quarterback on the list, and I believe it's the only quarterback that make the list, and that's Kyler Murray. Where do you have him going? And is it going to be the Cardinals? Is that where he's really going to end up?
Yeah, so we've got 2 quarterbacks on this list. I also have Dwayne Haskins coming up in a bit.
Oh, you're right.
I really like both of these guys, to be honest, but they're a little bit different styles. And the only way I don't see him going to the Cardinals is if Oakland wants to package their trades and move up and take that spot. But I don't think that they're going to want to move up because Gruden looks pretty confident in Derek Carr. At least he sounds confident, saying, we're sticking with him. And Carr is still fairly young. I don't see a need to really replace him. There's a lot of other issues on that team that need to be addressed first, in my opinion. Carr's okay enough to get the job done. But when you look at Arizona, they could take somebody like Josh Allen or Nick Bosa, but there's no point in even playing defense if you can't score at all. So they got to get something going. And the thing I really like about Kyler Murray is he's really good from the shotgun, but he's really good in those RPO situations. So with David Johnson there, you could see that rebirth of David Johnson. It's what I'm really holding out for. Those guys would work together really well, I think. And when I look at Kyler Murray, I see a cross of that Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson that is ideal. Lamar Jackson's a little bit better runner than Patrick Mahomes, and I think Kyler Murray is as well. But then, obviously, Mahomes is a much better thrower than Lamar Jackson. And, Kyler Murray has that baseball background, that shortstop, just like Patrick Mahomes. You've seen so many throws where he's rolling out to his right or his left, throwing off one foot, and it's always accurate. So that's something that the Cardinals really need, especially with a receiving core that's nothing besides Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah, that's a great call there, and I think it's pretty much going to happen. He's going to be in Arizona for sure, I think. Anybody want to chime in on Kyler Murray? I know he's kind of a hot button for a lot of people here. Ryan, what do you think of Murray going to the Cardinals?
I mean, it's a done deal. He fits the offense. He's not my QB1. I think I'm one of the rare people out there who has Haskins as my QB1, but that's a whole different story. But he fits what they do. They like to spread offense. He needs that athleticism. They need somebody who can avoid rushers because their offensive line Swiss cheese. It fits. It has to happen.
Yep, agreed. And I'm happy about it because as a 49ers fan, it means we're going to get Nick Bosa most likely. So I'm happy that they're going to take Kyler Murray number 1 overall. So have at it, Cardinals. All right, so I'm up next here. I got another tight end on my list, Irv Smith Jr., 6'4", 241 pounds. His season last year, 41 catches, 710 yards, 7 touchdowns. A great combine, 4.63, which is 4th overall. He had a decent 3-cone and then ended up 8th overall in the 20-yard shuttle. He's also an elite blocker and a guy that I think will see the field in his rookie season as a blocker, which means, if you're on the field, you can eventually get into the offense and catch passes. We know tight end takes a while to develop, but if you can block, you can get on the field. And I kind of have his ideal spot and where I think he's going to end up at the same, and that's the Patriots. I think he goes there to be the quote-unquote Gronk replacement. I don't think he's going to be Gronk necessarily, but he fits the mold that they want. They want to be able to run the ball. He can block. He's just like Gronk could have blocked. He can run the routes. He's got, down-the-field speed. He's got good hands. I think he fits that Patriots system perfectly. In the Combine, if you want to watch a perfect gauntlet, go watch his tape in the gauntlet from the Combine. I mean, it was a thing of beauty. He was on straight line. I mean, hitting the passes, didn't miss anything, catching away from his body. I mean, it was beautiful. And I think that's what the Patriots look for, a guy who can block but also be a downfield receiver as well. So Irv Smith Jr. to the Patriots for me. I think he's got the 4th round grade. Patriots got the last pick or second to last pick in the 4th round at 4.32. So I think he could fall to them in the 4th round and be an excellent addition there.
Love that.
All right, let's see. Next up, Ryan, you got Devin Singletary, who I know we had a guest on earlier in the year, Mr. Singleton. He came on and he was all about Devin Singletary. And then, of course, his combine wasn't so great and he's dropped a little bit. But talk about him a little bit for us.
I wanted to trade out of this pick myself. I'm not a big Devin Singletary fan. I wasn't before the combine. Really not now, but the combine kind of just assured it. He has positive traits. He has great balance, good vision. He's good at bouncing off contact, but he's not explosive. He wasn't there, and he has, for being a small back, very small back at a 5'7", 203, he's not really a fantastic receiver. His best season for catches was 26, and that was 3 years ago, and he only had 163 yards. He cut 6 balls this year. So I don't want that out of my small receivers. So for instance, I want him in a good system where it's solid offense and it's kind of spread out for him, so those holes are opened up and gaping. I have him going to the Chiefs. I don't believe in Damian Williams. I think they need a running back there. He can bounce off tackles. He can get those chunk plays, 6-7 yards. He's not going to break the long 40-yard runs, but 15-yard carries here and there. I think he'll do fine, and he's an okay enough receiver, I guess. It's not elite or anything special, but it's enough where it's still a threat. So I think in Kansas City, if he goes there, he can succeed. I think almost any running back there can.
Yeah, I think any running back drafted to Kansas City immediately jumps in value. I mean, even if it's a lower ranked guy and they give him the 4th, 5th, 6th round, I think they become valuable because a lot of people don't believe in Damian Williams. So I agree there. If Singletary goes there, then for sure I think his value increases quite a bit. All right, we're going up against the clock a little bit here, so let's do some quick fire. Steven, you got Justin Hill up next. Talk about him a little bit and where you think he might end up.
Yeah, Justice Hill is he's kind of why you want to look at the combine, because if you see the combine numbers off the charts for Justice Hill, except for that agility score. What's going on with that agility score? Well, he pulled his hamstring and couldn't do it. So 4.40, 97th percentile at 5'10", 198, elite speed for Justice Hill. But he's had hamstring injuries in the past, so there's a big risk here. He missed a few games in his final season at Oklahoma State because of a hamstring, and then you never want to pull the hamstring the day of your combine. But, on a 40-yard dash, obviously, you're exerting a lot. But it's really tough. We've seen in the past with Leonard Fournette, hamstring injuries linger. So whoever drafts him, they need to mediate that risk with Justice Hill. They need to have running backs already ready to go. And I'm thinking the Atlanta Falcons for Justice Hill. If he is who we think he can be, then the Falcons won the lottery. Yeah. But they don't need him to be anything with Devontae Freeman and Ito Smith, who they seem to be pretty confident about. I'm not a big Ito Smith guy. I think Justice Hill has flashed in the catch-passing game at Oklahoma State, so he can kind of be that Tevin Coleman if they need him to be. And if for whatever reason Devontae Freeman can't stay healthy, they have Justice Hill waiting. And I think that he could back up Devontae Freeman for the next 2 years and be a guy eventually if he can develop into what we think he could.
I love that place. I had never even considered the Falcons because of Freeman and Ito Smith being there, but that's a great landing spot in that offense. That would be an amazing spot to land. All right.
I agree with the Ito Smith take. Sorry, just want to get that out there.
What's that?
Not a fan
I agree with the
Ito
Ito Smith take. He's nothing special.
Yeah.
All right, Blake, you got the
can't agree with that coach speak,
What was that?
The coach speak, with Ito Smith in the offseason. They're happy with Ito Smith. I think they're going to draft somebody.
Yep, I agree. Yep. Agreed. All right, Blake, you're up next with the other quarterback here, Mr. Dwayne Haskins, and where do you think he might land? Blake, are you on mute? I can't hear you.
Oh, there we go.
All right,
there we go. I'm good now. I'm the quarterback guy, I guess, tonight. I got both of them. But, I really like Dwayne Haskins, and I think that Ryan brought up a great point where I think Dwayne Haskins could be the quarterback one out of this draft class, even though Kyler Murray has to go first, because Dwayne Haskins just doesn't fit in that Arizona offense quite like Kyler Murray would. And I personally have Dwayne Haskins going to the New York Giants as the 6th spot. I think that's a perfect place to go. And the only way I don't see that happening is if somebody wants to trade up in front of them, in front of the Giants. So somewhere in those top 5 spots, some team could come up and take them, maybe like the Miami Dolphins. But I think the Giants are the team that's really ready for that quarterback. And he fits well there. He needs, to be able to sit back in the pocket. He'll benefit from having a guy like Saquon Barkley there who's able to get out and receive balls and protect him a little bit. And I compared him a lot to Jameis Winston. But the difference between Jameis Winston and Dwayne Haskins is that Haskins actually is able to make smart decisions and not just turn the ball over all the time.
Yeah, good call there. I think Haskins is a pretty popular pick of where he might end up. And, even Eli came out and said that he expects him to draft a quarterback, and Haskins just fits with what they would want. So, agreed there 100%. All right, next up, I got the number 23rd ranked player, and then we'll finish up with Ryan, and then we'll do a couple of the outside the 24 guys. But the guy I got is Marquise Hollywood Brown. He is the 5'9", 165-pound receiver that everyone is sort of scared of his size, including myself. I have a list that I wrote down here of receivers that are under 5'10" and under 180 pounds in NFL history. Here's the successful list of players that are under 5'10" and under 180 pounds. You ready? That's it. There isn't anybody. There's not a single one. This never happened before. There's some smaller guys, Steve Smith, T.Y. Hilton, they came in at 5'10". They were all over 180 pounds. This guy is super small. Unless he can somehow add muscle without losing that speed, I don't think he's going to be successful in the NFL. However, if we're picking ideal landing spots, there is one coach out there that has success with small receivers, and that's Bruce Arians. Obviously, he was the offensive coordinator for Pittsburgh when they had Antonio Brown at 5'10". He was also in Indianapolis for a year when they had T.Y. Hilton at 5'9". And then he even had John Brown in Arizona at 5'10" as well, in his two of his best years that he's ever had. So if he somehow ends up with the Bucs, maybe I give him a little bit more respect there, and maybe Arians can kind of turn him into that guy that John Brown, maybe not Antonio Brown, but John Brown / T.Y. Hilton a little bit in that offense that should be throwing the ball down the field. But I don't think he ends up on the Bucs. I do think the Redskins are enamored with him, and I think that they can get him in the second round. That's all I've heard on radio driving to work in the morning is Marquise Brown this, Marquise Brown that. No one seems to even take into account how small he is. They compare him to Jamison Crowder, and they think that he can fill that role here in Washington. I don't agree with it, but I do think the Redskins do eventually take him. So that's where I got him going.
I'm real glad you did that because I was about to go back-to-back to the same team. I like Hollywood Brown as a field stretcher, but he's not Jamison Crowder. I've never heard that before, and that's insane. You should call the Washington radio and tell them they're idiots. Guess I jump into transition to my guy who I have going to the Bucs. That's Emmanuel Hall. Emmanuel Hall is a dude I loved before the combine. I probably sent Jeff a few videos of him and talked about him a little bit too much. He is thing everyone talks about. He's a burner. He's a deep ball threat. He catches everything downfield. He killed the combine. I mean, he ran a 4.39. He had a 43-inch broad jump. He had 43-inch vertical. He had the best broad jump ever for a wide receiver, second best ever in combine history. He's an absolute freak. But the thing that blew me away and ruined Drew Lock for me is watching him adjust to the ball. He had so many balls thrown to him downfield, across the middle, that should have been uncatchable. They're behind him, they're low, they're high. And he made phenomenal adjustments to them and made Drew Lock look fantastic. And it's going to get Drew Lock as a first-round pick because of it. I think Emmanuel Hall's going to be a steal third. They have all these big guys with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard. They need a dude who can stretch the field. They had D. Jackson there. He's getting up there in age. Hall's that, but he can do a little bit more. He can run after the catch. He can run slant routes. He does more than just a fly route. I think he could be dynamic there. He's going to be more of a best ball kind of guy because he's going to be hit or miss on his big games, but man, he could perform there.
Yeah, good stuff. I know you have a man crush on him for sure. Ever since that combine sort of caught me by surprise because I didn't see that type of combine from him. But again, like I said, I don't watch college football and I don't watch as much film as you do. So seeing that kind of jumped out at me, and that's why I wanted to make sure you ended up on Emmanuel Hall for that 24th pick. All right, so that wraps up the top 24, guys. I did ask everybody to bring a guy that they thought outside the top 24 that could end up being a top 20-plus guy. And Steven, we'll go to you first. You got a receiver that you want to talk about, and I listened to your podcast just the other day. Y'all had Marquise Brown was one of the guys you talked about, and you also brought up this guy here too. So I wanted to give you a chance to sort of talk about him and where you think he might go.
Yeah, there's a lot of value coming out of West Virginia, and David Sills, he isn't going to be a spectacular rookie. I think he can develop into something, kind of like a Jordy Nelson that, we didn't really know what to make of Jordy Nelson until he got in the right situation, and he turned out to be a ball player. I think that David Sills can wind up on the New England Patriots and put in a decent rookie campaign. You mentioned it earlier, Jeff. I mean, it's a who's who of wide receivers in the slot. They have they brought in Bruce Ellington, they brought in Maurice Harris out of Washington, and now they got Demaryius Thomas. So we've seen them pick up these veteran players, and they don't even make it to week 1. So the jury's still out on DT. I think he makes the team, but we need like a bigger receiver in New England. And when I say we, I'm just saying in fantasy football in general. What David Sills excels at is, he's 6'3", so he has the size. He's great at the back shoulder throw. Obviously, Tom Brady is elite with the back shoulder when it comes to the end zone. And we saw him have success with a guy like Josh Gordon, who is a bigger receiver, not comparing the athleticism of Josh Gordon to David Sills, but a bigger guy in the red zone. They're going to need it. They have a bunch of shorter guys, kind of like the New York Giants. They need some size out there. I think David Sills just fits the bill there.
Yeah, I love it there. And it's funny because when I first put out my first rankings, I had a guy that must have been a fan of West Virginia. He came on and was talking about Sills and made me go sort of back and look at him. And you're right. I mean, he has those Jordy Nelson type traits where he doesn't jump out at you, but I think he's good enough that he can actually, in the right system, be a pretty good receiver. So definitely love that. And he'll be, obviously going late in some of those dynasty mock or dynasty drafts. So I think that Sills is a great call there. All right, Blake, we'll go to you next, and you got a running back that you want to talk about. Talk about your guy a little bit.
Yeah, so I really love Benny Snell as kind of the sleeper running back in this whole draft class. One of these guys that I think in 5 years you're really going to be talking about, like, wow, how did we miss him? Why is he not on our fantasy team? And I don't know that he's going to just walk into a team and have a role. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think he could be really good with a team like Kansas City or Chicago. He's just got this great vision. When you watch his tape, he knows exactly where he's going to go before the defender knows where they're going to go. And he's this bigger guy. He's not explosive, so he kind of relies on that. And he makes these very small changes. He doesn't take these huge swings outside. It's just really small footwork that helps him pick up a lot of yardage, actually. And when I was looking at him, he's very patient, kind of like Le'Veon Bell, where he'll just sit back there, let the defense figure out what they're going to do, and then as soon as he decides where he's going, he hits the hole like C.J. Anderson. So if you combine that, you get a guy that can just bowl over people, you put him behind a really good offensive line, and he's going to do some damage for you.
Where do you what if you were to put him anywhere on a team, where are you going to have him at?
I really want to put him in Chicago, but I don't know that he's going to go all the way back to the 88th pick. Chicago could move up. They've done it before. They probably don't want to sit back all the way at 88, but right now that's kind of my dream spot for him. But you got Tampa Bay at 70 and Kansas City at 61. Those would all be really good possibilities.
All right, good stuff there. All right, I'll go next with my guy, wide receiver. This is a guy that I didn't even have ranked until after the combine. I watched his tape at Notre Dame. That's Miles Boykin, 6'4", 228-pound receiver. His numbers don't jump out at you. 59 catches, 872, and 8 touchdowns. And even his tape, when I watched it, I didn't see fast guy. I didn't see this agile. I just didn't see it. Then he went to the combine. He ran a respectable 40, 4.42 at, that was 9th overall. His 3-cone was the best at the combine at 6.77, and he had the third best 20-yard at 4.07. His broad jump at 140 was second, only to, I believe, Emmanuel Hall, and he had the best vertical. So this guy is an uber athlete that just didn't show up on tape as an athlete, and I think that Notre Dame offense is sort of what held him back. The quarterback there wasn't the greatest quarterback for him. And if I'm taking these late round guys, third round, and if your dynasty leagues go into the fourth round, you might get him in the fourth round as well. I want guys with tremendous upside, and I think Miles Boykin has that. I think he could come and be a bust, but I think he, with that athletic ability, could end up being a great pick in the late rounds for dynasty leagues. And his ideal spot and where I actually think he might end up are the same, and that's the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs would take a chance on him in a late fourth, early fifth round. And if he ends up there, and anything happens with Tyreek Hill and the receivers that they've got there, Sammy Watkins can't stay healthy, he might find himself in a starting role here pretty quickly, and he could be amazing in that offense with that speed and agility that he has. And if Boykins goes there, he jumps in my draft boards quite a bit. So I love me some Miles Boykins in that late third round. I think me and you did a mock draft just recently, Ryan, and I had the very last pick in the 4th round, and I got Miles Boykins there, and I was ecstatic to land that pick for sure.
Yeah, I think you did, yeah. I'm going to change who I initially had on there.
All right.
Because it was a little bit boring for me. I want to talk about Jalen Hurd a little bit. Jalen Hurd, he converted from running back to receiver and transferred schools because of it. And he did it for the fact that he wanted to get paid. He said wide receivers don't get paid, or running backs don't get paid like receivers, so moving. And the thing is, he was starting at Tennessee at running back over Alvin Kamara. Like, he's an ultra-talented dude, and he came in over to Baylor at wide receiver and absolutely killed it. He's super athletic. He played the slot. He's big. He's strong. He's 6'4", 217 pounds. He bullies guys. He can do a little bit of everything. He's a guy who can be used all around the field, kind of how we saw the Patriots use Cordell Patterson this year. They can run him. He can go deep with them, go over the middle, run after catch, everything you want. He's a bit of a raw prospect, but the thing is, he's a guy who has a ton of upside, kind of how you talked about Boykin, where using a guy like that, just get him the ball. And that's what someone like Jalen Hurd can do. I want to see him somewhere where it's going to be a little bit more creative with it. The common sense thing's the Patriots because we've seen it before, but I'd like to see him somewhere like Seattle. Give them a big-bodied guy who they can move around, run on jet sweeps, give them a little bit different other than that Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett type of pick. They can push him back in the running back spot because, they don't have enough of them. But he'll keep defenses honest, and I think he can be productive there. I like what he brings to the field, and just watch the dude play. He's exciting, and there's a lot to like there.
Love it. Love the pick there, and I love that little quick switch there because you did have Myles Gaskins as your pick there. And I was surprised when you said Myles Gaskins because I know you've talked about Hurd a little bit with me already. I thought you for sure you'd go with him, but you kind of pulled a little bit of a last switcheroo there.
I got bored just looking at the Gaskins stats. He's just, he's cool. He was 4-year starter. He's really productive, but it's nothing exciting for the league. He's just going to be a guy who can spot start somewhere.
All right, good stuff. That wraps up the podcast, guys. I want to give Steven and Blake a chance to sort of plug themselves again. Plug your show, guys. Where can we find it at? All that good stuff there. Steven, what you got?
Yeah, again, find me on Twitter at FFProfessorST3. I am going to be writing with Gridiron Experts coming up in the off-season, going into the season. I'm very excited about that over there with Mike Riggs and Anthony Sorvino. And then, of course, we're doing an episode about once every other week. Once we get into the season, we do once a week, maybe twice a week, depending on, what we got going on. But we're really excited about the draft service that we got coming up. And Blake, I'll let you kind of talk about that a little bit.
All right, Blake.
Yeah, so it's a big announcement. We're going to tee it off here. Yeah, we're starting this draft service. So, if you're busy, you've got a kid's birthday party to go to, you got a dentist appointment, all those things that you hate and you'd rather be drafting, you can hit us up. We'll get your takes, guys that you like, guys you don't like. We'll run your draft for you. Or if you just want some help while you're drafting, maybe you're in an office league, you really want to win, but you just join because you're pressured into it. You can hit us up and we'll help you with a video chat during your draft and make sure that you get winning lineups every week so that you're winning your leagues, and then hopefully you'll keep coming back and we'll help create some champions. So be sure to check us out for that at the Hot Take Pod on Twitter, and you can follow me on Twitter at Blake Sullivan FF.
All right, good stuff there. I love the idea. I know you talked about it a little bit with me before with this draft service, and I think it's a great idea because you're right, office leagues sometimes people are playing fantasy football that don't really know a lot about it, don't have the time to really study it. Perfect example is I had a young lady that followed me from the very beginning on Twitter, and I practically drafted her first 3 teams. She's a teacher, that doesn't follow fantasy football. She's a big Ravens fan, so Ryan, you know, she's a huge Ravens fan. She follows football, just not fantasy, and I helped draft her team.
She doesn't know offense then. It's cool. I get it.
Exactly. But yeah, I think it's a service that can definitely be used, I think, for, especially like you said, like office leagues, or you don't have time in your busy life to get the draft done. I know, like, every year I hold my draft, we go somewhere to do it, and every year at least one guy can't make it. So if you had a service like that where I can say, hey, I trust you, you know, go draft for me, and I'll just deal with whatever team you draft for me. I think that's a great service. So good stuff there. Where can we find this at? Is it just on Twitter, or a website we can go to?
Yeah, so it's going to be held on thefsgn.com. That's the Fantasy Sports Gaming Network. Obviously, you'll be able to find it through our Twitters. We're pretty active there, so if you want to hit us up and ask us questions about it, you know, if you have things that you'd like to see in the service that would be useful to you, obviously give us your ideas. And we're going to be, it's more than just drafting your team. You know, it's going to be a meeting before, a debrief after, you know, maybe guys that we drafted, but we think you should trade while their value's good. And obviously we'll be around every week to take your start sit questions and waiver wire stuff. So yeah, just be sure to reach out to us on Twitter. We don't bite too much.
All right. Good stuff, guys. Love it. All right. Well, that's the show, guys. I'm Jeff. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeff Lambert. For Ryan, for Steven, for Blake, that's the show. Peace.